And for those of you in leadership, you will probably be in your own group of leaders. And I would invite you to take the opportunity to practice, because all of these skills work equally as well in supporting your staff as they do in supporting families.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, so we'll see you guys back in about 15 minutes, and we will broadcast when it's time to switch partners or switch roles. Does Dina need help to get in her group?
Oh, there she goes. Great.
Tough crowd.
A little quiet this afternoon, huh?
Yeah. Strengths that you observed. And you can feel free to type that up. Sometimes that's really easy when you're learning. It's much easier to type it in the chat box or say off the cuff. Please feel free to unmute.
Mm-hmm.
Vivian, I'm gonna holler at you, girl, because I know you got this. So help me out here.
I was actually the interviewer.
I kind of thought that. So how was that for you to be in the hot seat?
At first I was nervous because I was like, it's always different from when you're working with a client. So I figured just try to see my partner as a client. I'm gonna try to get to know her. What does she do? Understand what she does. So kind of like go from there. I asked, tell me something that you value in your work, and kind of go from there. I asked for examples on, I think she said, she loves that she's able to help and work with new moms to teach them how to play with their babies. I asked her examples on how, as a provider, would you teach your mom to play with babies? So setting examples for those that are crawling, like doing the obstacle course, being in the in-home environment. So it's nice when you get to know someone else as a provider and kind of see what they do in their job.
Excellent. And so those of you that were partnering with Vivian, can anybody offer her a reflection back, or sorry, an affirmation based on a strength that you observed?
Yes, so I was the observer, and I did a great job. She had good eye contact. I could tell she was very attentive. She asked a lot of open-ended questions, asking those examples. Gave an opportunity for Felicia to respond to those questions. So she did really good.
Excellent. So yeah, it sounds like Vivian did a great job, and she really knows how to hold the space for someone who's sharing about themselves.
Thank you, guys.
We have some comments in the chat box.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Lucia says she did a great job with asking interesting open-ended questions. Natasha said Laura made great eye contact, was patient, engaged in listening, positive voice prosody.
Beautiful. So if we were to take that and shift that just a little, so you guys are just providing the strengths here, which is perfect. If I were to be looking at Laura right now and talking to her, I'd say, you know, wow, Laura, the way you maintain eye contact, it really shows just how patient and engaged you are when you're listening. Right? So kind of taking those strengths and kind of like wrapping them into a statement that's really person focused, right? We talked about being a person-centered approach. Sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, no, that was great. And Julia mentioned that Cindy did a great job asking thoughtful questions to show interest in the parents' situation and concerns.
Excellent. So yeah, so do you see that descriptive word that Cindy used there, like thoughtful questions? You want to bring in that descriptive language. That's really helpful, because she could, you know, Julia could have said, Cindy asked a lot of questions to show her interest. And that's fine. But when we start to bring in some language that brings life to something, that's a really effective affirmation. So really getting that descriptive language in there, which overall I'm seeing you guys are doing an amazing job with here. Any other reflections or things? I don't know if any of you were able to do the counts and might have noticed or were surprised if you were on the receiving end of that. And I would also invite you, if you were being observed and you want to know your counts, just private message the person through chat and say, hey, how many open-ended questions did I get anyway? Because it is really helpful feedback to know. Any others want to share either your experience of asking those questions and being, keeping and maintaining open-ended questions, or an affirmation or something you observed? Five questions. So 5 questions, that's pretty darn impressive in such a short period of time. Okay, now I like what Laura said here, and I'm just going to show you how simple an affirmation can be with this. Natasha, you're so relaxed and yet very enthusiastic about your job, right? There's nothing fancy about that, but because of the descriptive words and the energy that you bring to it, you're showing why it matters. All right, well, let's pause here and take our break. So go ahead and take your 3-minute break. We'll come back at 1:51.
That was a really good way to roll with it. And we got.
Okay, if you're back, go ahead and turn on your camera. I think for the sake of time, I'm going to move us along because I do want to give you, I want you to have enough time in your next group activity. And it's taking me a little bit longer than I anticipated to go through the skills. If you're back, turn on your camera for me, just so I know you're here. Definitely turn it back off if you need to. All right, so we're going to pick up with reflections. Actually, I do want to share, Jennifer and I were just chatting when you guys were on your break, and she was kindly offering me an affirmation. And what I was telling her, because right out the gate, she nailed it. The first statement that came out of her mouth was a perfect affirmation, but she fell into a trap that I know I do a lot and that you guys might find too, which is where we feel like we didn't do enough. And so we start to offer more. And she coined it as keep it simple. And that's really what you should think about with all of these skills. I would say to start, don't feel like you need to overdo it. Sometimes it's going to be keeping it very simple will allow you to get more comfortable. You can get fancy later. Trust your first call and don't feel like you have to overdo it, because it will continue to remain more genuine if you stick with just keeping it very simple in the beginning. All right, so we're going to transition to reflections. And reflections are really important because they really allow the parent to start to make sense of what's going on, of what you're communicating, of the next steps, the paths forward. Even if it's ideas they gave you, it really helps them to solidify. So why do we use them? In engaging, we really use them to demonstrate curiosity and commitment to understanding the family. So really when Vivian was sharing, she was really reflecting back to you guys a lot of what she heard. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but she was like, she had her little notes that she had been taking. And she really did a pretty nice job of just reflecting a lot of what she heard from her conversation. And that's really all it is. But it's just showing and I heard from what she was saying as well that she was very committed to understanding this individual that she was talking to. And that's what this is about with reflections early on, is making sure that you're getting it right and that you understand what you're learning about this family. And then as you kind of start to get in your groove with the parent, you're focusing, evoking, and planning, it really will offer that opportunity to hear his or her own words, feelings, and behaviors, and to process them for a second time, right? Have you ever sometimes, for example, when we have an idea, or particularly if you think about your own experiences of changing behaviors, you often don't have a solid plan the first go round, right? You're kind of like, oh yeah, so I'm going to get, let's say you want to start exercising. I'm going to get that treadmill. I'm going to start walking every day at 5 in the morning and da 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 da. Next day you wake up at 7:10, your plan's already out the door. And so you have to reconceptualize. And so sometimes we really have to go back through in our brains and remap this whole plan. And by reflecting back, you're able to support parents to do that, to reprocess what they were doing, what their plan was, and to then choose to take action as they see fit. And it's also just to reflect general experiences, kind of like in the moment experiences during an interaction or an event. So I could see you guys using a lot of reflections when you have a conversation with a parent following the developmental assessment, right? They're going to be walking you through what happened, and you'll ask, if you're following the MI rule, it's kind of, they call it 2 to 1. It's 2 reflections for every open-ended question. So if you, let's say this is after your a family attends the developmental assessment and you are going to have a follow-up call with them, you'll start with a nice open-ended question, how did it go in the developmental assessment? Then the parent's going to start to give you a story, right? And so before you ask any more questions, you want to really focus in on what they're saying, and you're going to provide 1 to 2 reflections. Then you can start to transition back into open-ended questions. You want to make sure you get that story right the first time, and that they understand what they're communicating, and they're helping to make meaning of what they experienced. All right, so with reflections, there's a couple different kinds, and so I'm only sharing a handful. And for those of you that are new to this, for those of you that are like, I don't think I can do these things yet, start right here. Simple reflections, repeating words. I feel like I've mentioned this to you guys before, but we have a team member that I work with on First Steps, and this is something he does, and I always find it very helpful when I'm in conversations with him. He really just repeats back in the exact same words almost what's been said, and it just helps me to focus. It helps me to process more what he's saying or what's been discussed. It's very simple. There's nothing fancy about it, but it allows people to feel heard and understood. And then reflecting or sharing back observed feelings or behaviors. So this is going kind of the next step, as far as a parent might not tell you, I feel really angry about this, but you see it, you read it, you feel it. So it might sound something like, you're feeling disappointed because you'd hope to see more progress with Maria's speech by now, right? So a parent might have told you like a paragraph of information about Maria's speech, and you're just going to want to reflect back and focus on that feeling. Or behaviors. I noticed you're fidgeting a bit right now, right? So I reflect back what I'm seeing in their behavior. And then I might follow that up with an open-ended question. What's on your mind? And then there's an amplified reflection, and that's really rephrasing the parent's words, but in an exaggerated way. So, parent tells you about what's going on with the child's behavior, and you might come back with, wow, it sounds like you've really reached your breaking point with this behavior. That's probably not that's not what the parent said to you, but you want to provide, you want to exaggerate the feeling and see if you are accurately empathizing with this person. And they might tell you, oh no, it actually wasn't that big of a deal. That's okay. Your job is not to be right. Your job is to listen and to want to understand. And so that's what you're doing, is you're clarifying what you're hearing, and they'll tell you better what they were communicating. And then this one is number 4. This is like the home run right here. This is very tricky to do, so don't put it at your list of like, I'm going to start doing this tomorrow. But how many of you have ever been on a call with a parent where they kind of go on a tangent or a story, and you hear them tell you one thing 1 minute, and then the next minute maybe, and this doesn't even have to be a parent, we have this in any interactions we have, they tell you something very different that isn't the same, right? On the one hand, you really want him to stop using his pacifier, and on the other hand, you feel like he doesn't really have anything else to help with all that's going on right now. Things are really stressful. right? So you're asking people to highlight discrepancy. It's a double-sided reflection. You're reflecting two ways of feeling about something. And this helps people who are unsure about decisions to make. So if the SLP said, get rid of the pacifier, and nobody understands, well, why won't she do that? You're highlighting why she won't do that in that statement and bringing that forward for the parent to think about. So which one matters more to you? You know, the passy, getting rid of the passy, or the soothing? And then you can have that conversation, but let the parent get clear on that. Let them decide. Well, I just want him to be comfortable. Okay, well, what would it look like if we talked about some other soothing techniques? What other soothing techniques does he have? Right? So you're really helping people get clear on their needs, their experiences, what they're sharing. Does that make sense? I can tell you for sure, this is a place where a lot of magic happens. And when you start to use these double-sided reflections, you will really see parents, you'll see the light bulbs going off. Oh, well, yeah, because we often don't recognize when we're feeling ambivalent or unsure about decisions that we need to make, or when we're kind of teetering back and forth between making a change or not making a change. But any of these are helpful, and a parent is going to feel heard and understood, and they're going to get really clear on what they want and need. So let's take a moment to watch a little video clip again of reflections in action. And again, we're looking for the skill, but I still want you guys to really anchor in with the spirit, which is what you feel in their communication technique.
I wanted to ask you how it went with baby Isabel the last couple weeks, with her sleeping in her crib.
It worked out okay.
Good.
Yeah, I think after the first few nights, I've been sleeping better. I only wake up when she cries. When she was sleeping on my bed, I think I woke up with every little move or sound she made. Having her crib right next to my bed, I think it worked out better for me.
So it seems like, along with the safe job, to be a good thing for your sleeping.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
So you guys kind of saw there what happened. She started with one open-ended question. Mom talked for quite a bit, right? So Mom did most of the talking, and then there was a really brief reflection back of what it sounded like to me was really a reflection of the feeling or the experience that the parent was having of, it sounds like you got more sleep, right? And what I can tell you is behind that is that's probably something mom values, right? So when you talk to parents, they're going to share their hopes, their dreams, their values with you. You want to hold those in your back pocket because that's what motivates people. Right? We can do all we want to tell people, well, this is what was recommended. This is what is best practice. This is what the experts say. Really, people don't, deep down in our souls, that's not what drives behavior. We might like to follow, for myself as a rule follower, I might try to follow those rules, but if you really want to see someone change their behavior and do something that's difficult, they're only going to be inspired by their hopes and dreams. Luckily, being in the business of working with children and families, most parents have pretty big dreams and hopes for their kids. So if you can bring those values into the reflections that you share with parents, that's really going to get their attention, and they're going to be more interested in kind of digging deeper there. What kind of comments or questions do you have about reflections? This is one of those ones that really takes quite a bit of slowing down, guys. So again, it'll require you to pause, to listen. And I know all of you have been in that position of listening where you feel like you have to listen. And while you're kind of listening, you're also thinking really hard about what you're going to want to say next. And that is kind of a pothole when you start using motivational interviewing, but really just be listening for what matters to the parent, because that's going to be your connection with them, and that's going to matter the most. Devin shared that she finds reflections very validating for parents. For all of us, I think, right? Like, we like to have that reflected back. If you've been in supervision and you hear from your supervisor, they're reflecting back what you're seeing, feeling, or experiencing. That feels like they care. Okay. So next are summaries, which are super duper similar to reflections. So that's really providing transition or closure to conversations, and it clarifies goals, next steps, and plans of action. So I think in our program, it seems pretty clear that you would offer a summary really at the end of every conversation you have with a parent. And I imagine most of you probably do that at least informally already, because it really is how you kind of get clear on what's next and setting those clear expectations in the program. In MI, we think about this. I have this little bouquet, which probably to you guys might be like, what does that have to do with a summary? We really think about summaries as a gift to offer back to the family. You have been listening to them this entire conversation, and you've been really paying close attention to what matters most to them. And like I said, that might be very closely aligned to where you hear things about what they value, what's important to them, how they're feeling. And you're going to want to pick and choose a couple of those pieces and put that into the beautiful bouquet that you're going to share back with the parent in that conversation as you're ending that conversation. And it's just kind of going back to that idea of the Mia step, or the burger. You know, ending that bottom bun being that summary is just such a nice, it's a ritualistic way of closing a conversation with a family. Much like we talk about how important it is for small children to have, you know, these kind of very intentional goodbyes. Most of us adults really appreciate that as well, especially when we're interacting in something like a system where we might feel a little more vulnerable about our job as a parent. So what do summaries look like? They can be collective. So that's kind of what I was just talking about now. So let's go over what we've talked about so far. So you really want to kind of bring it all together. And again, when you're finishing up, particularly a family intake, I think you really want to shoot to have a pretty solid summary for the parent. And again, you'll have a summary on your paper that is a summary for our program. Your summary with the parent is about what matters to them. What matters to them, of course, is going to be details like, you know, where do I need to go next? Who am I talking to next? But what did you hear from them that really highlighted their concerns and why they showed up to the program? You really want to anchor back with those pieces and let them know that you heard them. And then a linking. So that's really kind of connecting conversations. So again, you may get a parent who's telling you quite a bit, and one piece of it is really something you would like to learn more about, but you don't want to interrupt, but you feel like you need to revisit that because it might be something that's important to the work that you have to do. So you might link a conversation. A minute ago, you mentioned your son's speech. Maybe now you can tell me a little bit more about that. Right? So again, it's a beautiful way to shift the conversation and show that you were listening so attentively, but also still getting your needs met to attend to certain areas of the conversation that if we were, you know, kind of, like I said earlier today, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, we wouldn't be guiding the conversation enough to allow that to happen, and we might miss some of the important pieces. And then a transitional. So again, this is, you know, closing a conversation or moving on to a new topic. Again, when you get parents on tangents, we want to hold the space, but this is about guiding, not about just like going all over. So you may need to transition a conversation. So you will call Brenda at California Early Start today about the appointment, and we can reconnect next week to hear how it went. Right? So maybe mom has been talking to you about Brenda at California Early Start for like 25 minutes, and you're anxiously looking at your watch thinking, I have like 5 other calls to do. You don't want to shut mom down, and you don't have to. You don't have to shut her down in the sense of, you know what, I actually have to get to another call. No, you can still connect with her idea. So from what I'm hearing from you, you're gonna definitely follow up. It's really important for you to follow up with Brenda at California Early Start today for that appointment, and then we can reconnect and you can tell me all about it. So you're still hearing her, you're still on the same page with her, but you can also transition because, yeah, you too have things to do. So just to know, this is all a balancing act, really. Any other points of interactions where a summary might be helpful in your work that you can think of? So when I think of care coordination and I think of points of interaction, I think about, you know, after doing screenings or assessments, lost to follow-up calls, different junctures where you are making intentional efforts to connect with a parent. Where's a time where having a really clear summary might be helpful?
I can think of maybe an example would be when a parent wants, like, she's scheduling services, but she keeps no showing services. So maybe like a summary of kind of what the next steps look like.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great one, because what that will allow for you as the care coordinator, what that's going to provide is it's going to allow you to get real clear with her on if you guys are on the same page about what next steps look like, right? As you repeat those for her, he or she may learn something new about the next steps, but you're also going to hear from them because they may come back with, oh, well, no, I didn't realize I was supposed to do that. They might even say, you didn't tell me I was supposed to do that. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So yeah, let's go back through that process and let's revisit that process. But summaries allow you guys to get on the same page, because if we've lost a parent to follow up, somewhere there's a breakdown in communication, right? It might not be with you, it might be with a different provider, but summaries allow us to summarize everything that we know, and then let the parent respond back to that with, oh yeah, that makes sense, or no, I don't think I could do that. I can't commit to that. So yeah, that's a really good example. All right, so let's just briefly watch a video of a summary. And like I said, they look very similar to reflections. It's just more the intentionality about how you want to use them to shift your conversations and timings.
Well, let me see if I have this right. You want to continue to socialize with your friends, which usually includes drinking, but you're thinking about how to drink less and not feel so bad so you can better take care of Keela the next day.
Yeah, I know I'd feel better if I didn't drink as much as I did last night. And, not be so dragged out with headaches and stuff. And I guess it could help not to have a hangover when Kayla gets fussy.
That's a plus, you're right, especially when you have a baby.
All right, so that piece, I want to highlight something important there. That was a nice example of a summary. And what did you guys notice about how mom responded to that summary? Does anybody know, what was mom talking about her behavior change? What did she share? It's kind of, we haven't talked about it today, but it's kind of like the slam dunk in motivational interviewing. Not only are you listening to the parent, but you're listening for something in particular, and that's called change talk. And that means their desire to change. So by providing that summary, the parent responded back with she gave you like 3 or 4 reasons why she should stop drinking. So that's really what we want to hear, is we want the parent to come back. We want them to talk themselves into change. It's not our job to force change on them. They're going to talk themselves into it. That's that self-talk piece. So that again is another benefit of these, is it allows parents to get clearer. And then we're going to start hearing less of the why I shouldn't do it and more of the why I want to do it. That's, reasons, needs, all these things that are behind changing behavior over time. So what's the reason for me to do the HAP activities? What's the reason for me to attend these appointments? You want to hear that from the parent, not from us. So we've got to help guide the conversation to get the parent talking about the reasons for doing what they're doing. All right. Okay, so let's give you one more opportunity to practice, and this will be a little less of a hot seat. So I'm going to pass this back over to Jennifer. You're muted.
Oh, thanks, Mariah. So the Schuyler sisters are getting back together again. Did you hear? What we want to do today is go through a scenario. So 2 weeks ago, if you remember, we met Patty and her daughter Maria. And Patty came to HDS concerned about her 2.5-year-old daughter's tantrums. Through talking with Patty, it emerged that Maria didn't talk a lot. So Patty, though, she was curious about the array of HDS services, and she was open to a development assessment for her daughter. So where we pick up the scenario is, I'll read through this for you all, but you can see it up on your screen. So you meet with Patty following her daughter's developmental assessment. She is speaking quickly, and you're having a hard time following her train of thought. She tells you, "The assessment was a mess. Maria refused to participate. Just like I said before, she is stubborn. Now, the development assessment specialist is recommending speech. My job isn't going to give me any grace to attend all these appointments. I mean, I think it's obvious we need behavior services if Maria couldn't even listen during the assessment. So that's the setup. And we're going to break you into your same groups that you had before. And what we'd like to have you do is first develop at least one feeling reflection. And again, this might be where you reflect what the client might be feeling. An example might be you're feeling blank because of blank. Secondly, we'd like you to develop a transitional summary. And again, this means, clarifying the goals and next steps and anchoring back to their values. And then the optional bonus is the double-sided reflection. And that's where you kind of meet their ambivalence and highlighting their discrepancy on the one hand and on the other hand. So we're going to break you up, and I guess I want to check in with Mariah. How much time would we like folks to spend here? It's about 2:15 right now.
I think we'll do 10 minutes.
Okay, so you've got 10 minutes and we'll see you back here. Thank you guys. And you may want to refer to slide 32 of your presentation.
And I definitely recommend that you write this. It will help you exponentially if you write it down, just to get the flow and to start to dial in the skill in your head.
Thanks, Mariah.
I will say, Jennifer, you've piqued my curiosity. I've been wanting to watch Hamilton for a long time, but I haven't motivated myself, but now I'm pretty motivated to do it.
Oh, right on. You'll be knowing how much you love music, I think.
Yeah. I want the kids to get into it with me, but I'm afraid they won't, and then I'll be disappointed because I'll be like, well, I won't be able to really watch it then, because if they're not into it, then yeah,
it is a long one.
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like we're all back. So would anyone like to start us off and share one of their feeling reflections that they used with Patty?
Guys can also type that in the chat box.
Yeah, use the chat. And is there anyone we haven't heard from today that wants to chime in?
What is a feeling? If you don't have a reflection, what's a feeling that you think, Patty? What's one feeling that pops for you in this scenario?
Frustration.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So you must be very frustrated. There's your reflection. Super simple. I also wonder if Patty is feeling overwhelmed. Nice. This must be very overwhelming for you, Patty. Excellent. Disappointment. Nice one, Raina. They're getting at some deeper feelings there, right? Like frustration and overwhelm are at the top, but there might be some disappointment down below that, right? Disappointed maybe that her daughter didn't perform, shall I say. Disappointed that she's not feeling like she's getting her needs met. Confused, right? These are all feelings that Patty might be feeling, and they're all worth reflecting. They would all open up helpful dialogues with Patty, any one of them, and help Patty feel heard and seen. What about a transitional summary? So we could hang out in the feelings for a little bit, but how would we move the conversation? So how would we'd honor her feelings, which we just did by sharing a feelings reflection, and then how could we transition this conversation with a summary that helps her feel heard? What's a point in the statement you might want to make sure that you reflect back in that summary? What's a key point? Any ideas? Did anybody get to try this in their group? Open to services but needs planning due to work schedule. Yeah. Patty, it sounds like you're really committed. We could throw a little affirmation in there. Patty, you're really committed to getting your daughter's needs met. And at the same time, you have a lot on your plate. So there's that double-sided reflection there, right? That I was talking about, the bonus. So that's really what Claudia is offering here, and you just flip it into that double-sided reflection. It sounds like you're really open to getting the support that you need for your daughter, and at the same time, you're really struggling with an inflexible work schedule. So she feels heard and seen. We also get some clarity. So after doing that, then you just might say, how would you like to move forward? What do you want to do next? Knowing having these two pieces of information. All right. Well, I'm gonna honor the time and transition us.
Great. Well, thank you guys. So that brings us to the close of our day 2 afternoon session of this training. And we have a survey for you guys that we would love, before you log off today, if you could take just 2 minutes to complete the survey, that would be great. And I'd like to share with you a few next steps that we have planned for you. We'll be preparing and distributing certificates of completion, and these training certificates are crosswalked with the training content. We've crosswalked this with the California Center for Infant, Family, and Early Childhood Mental Health competencies. And as we do in HDS and some of our other, like First 5 First Steps, we track all the hours that you spend in training and crosswalk to these competencies so that you can eventually earn the transdisciplinary infant, family, early childhood mental health practitioner endorsement. And we can share more about that endorsement process. I know that there's some folks on here that are even working towards that. So we'd love to hear more about that. So those are coming. And then coming up on March 26th, we have a learning community where we hope to gather all of you back together. This will be a chance to share your experiences with your fellow care coordinators. By then you'll have had several months to practice with the family intake and the family profile. And then you'll know your way around all the resources that we've created. So we look forward to you being able to share best practices and getting your feedback on how it's going. And then in April, we are having our evaluation work group, and we'll be focusing on care coordination and all the data that's coming from the assessment tools. It will be our first look at how we are able to capture more of the family story and their protective and risk factors. And so we know that as we have asked you to shift your practice, part of it is, of course, to hold that family and be able to really engage them where they're at and understand, their balance of protective and risk factors. We're also able to learn more about their story and capture it in our database. So we're looking forward to seeing, what comes of that and how we can better share HDS's story of their families. And so lastly, please know that Mariah and I are always available. Our virtual door is always open, but we also would be glad to join any team meetings to drill down on any aspects of what we covered today or in the previous training, or the tools, whatnot. We would be more than happy to pop in on one of your team meetings and chat about this. So at that, I'd like to say, please, if you can stay on and give us some feedback on our survey. And I just want to, again, thank you for all your engagement today, your participation, and just being part of this with us as we keep delivering those great services to families. So thank you.